Hi, and welcome back to the Mind of the Writer. So, this week I wanted to talk about my personal process and how I get into the zone, I get into that Zen like state in order for the story to come through me, in order for me to be a channeler as opposed to a controller when it comes to the fiction, creating fiction. This doesn't mean that I don't do the other type of writing. There are definitely moments when I'm strategic and I'm playing God and I have everything planned out and I'm in control. But I actually prefer the other kind of writing. To me, there's something really magical, almost mystical, when the story is coming through me and I'm receiving it from somewhere. I'm not sure where, but I absolutely love it when that happens. There are certain things that I need to do in order for that to happen, in order for me to be in the zone where that's more likely to happen. So I thought I'd go over some of them now. So the first thing I do, especially when it comes to writing stories, is I do it first thing in the morning. And by first thing in the morning, I really do mean first thing in the morning. I used to write at 4 a.m. And now if I'm writing, definitely I'm writing by 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning. My reason for doing that is I want to give the story my first self. If I need to cut myself off from my domestic reality in order to get into that mental space, the last thing I want to do is to start hooking myself into all of the things in my domestic reality, whether that is laundry and dishes and cooking and, finances and household chores and, things to do with running the household or anything that doesn't have to do with this imaginary world that I'm about to jump into. And if I don't write until the afternoon, well, then I'm going to get caught up in all of those domestic things, and it will be harder and harder as the day goes on for me to leave that behind and enter my imagination. So the first thing is definitely giving the story my first self so that there's not much of a chance for the domestic reality to interfere with that disappearance into the imagination. The second thing is a little quirky, but I always wear black. And I always wear black, not particularly because I like black, but when I am trying to focus on what is happening in my mind, or at least when I'm trying to get myself in a state where I'm open to receiving all these things coming to me. If I am wearing bright clothing with lots of patterns, or multiple colors or designs or stripes or anything like that, I actually can't concentrate. I'm distracted by myself, and that just simply can't happen. But when I'm wearing black, I'm able to not be distracted by anything that's on me, and I'm able to focus. And it's the same reason why I don't wear bracelets and I don't wear a watch. So I know that's kind of quirky, but that's definitely something I do so that I'm not looking down when I'm writing and I'm distracted by, a garden growing on my shirt or flowers or anything like that. The third thing that I do is I have the lights extremely dim, and that's for the same reason. I want to create an ambiance where I'm not distracted by bright lights. I used to write by candlelight, but now that we have 2 cats, I don't do that anymore. But the lights are very, very dim. And again, so that I'm creating an atmosphere, almost sounds kind of silly, but for time travel. Whereas if I have all the lights blaring, then again, I can't get into that relaxed, calm state that I need to be in order to just sort of fade into my imagination and let the story come and let the story take over. The other thing that I do is I use sound. When I'm trying to get into the meditative state or into that zone, I will often listen to meditative music. I mean, I look this stuff up on YouTube, but it will be meditative music for intellect or intelligence or the imagination. It's usually quite peaceful. Sometimes there are binaural beats in it to sort of have a rhythm that's tapping into whatever in my brain, and that gets me in a relaxed state so that I can receive the story more readily. With that, however, once the story starts to come to me, I use sound all the time. And now, in this day and age, we have access to sounds of, well, just a gazillion different sounds. So, for example, if I'm in the Victorian era and I want to describe a Victorian street, I can find that on YouTube, and I'm listening to horses clopping down, a cobblestone road in the rain. If I am in the study, in the big house, the big Victorian house in my story, I'm listening to, library sounds or the wind outside or the fire crackling and that helps me get into the imaginary world, or at least to meet the story that's coming to me. So those are some things I use, to get in the zone. First thing in the day, always wear black. The lights are dim. I use meditative music to get myself into the state. And then once the story starts coming to me, I meet it with the sounds that it demands or requires in order for me to write those scenes, and particularly in the Victorian era. Another thing that I do, not as frequently, so it's not a regular thing, but I have definitely done it before, is I use aromatherapy. So in my main novel, which is on Patreon, in the Victorian era, one scent, which is very prevalent, is bergamot. And that's difficult to find here in Canada. But I managed to find some essential oil. I put it in the infuser so that the room that I'm writing in, which is in my basement, is filled with that scent. And again, I'm stimulating the senses in order to sort of create, a more accurate world on the page. And I will say that I've even gone as far as to use food as well. So if I am writing in Victorian England for a while, don't be surprised that in my kitchen I'm going to be making, my great-grandmother's cakes, or I'm going to be having a lot more British imported food in the house to sort of, again, stimulate really to recreate England the best that I can in my Canadian world, so that I can have that as a sort of a semi-inspiration when I'm writing. So these are the things that I do to get into the zone, and it really is absolutely magical. So those are my tips, or my tricks of my trade anyway, and next week I'll be back on the Mind of the Writer.